This is Dom Bettinelli, the CEO of SQPN, with a brief but very important message. For more than a decade, SQPN has produced the Catholic faith and pop culture podcasts that you love. We're a non-profit organization, so it's only your generosity that lets us carry out our mission. We haven't run a fundraiser in 2 years, and that's why we need to ask for your help right now. Please make a pledge of whatever amount you can afford to help us continue providing your favorite podcasts, as well as exciting new ones we have planned. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. Thank you for your generosity. May we hear from you today? You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode number 103.
Don't be scared. All of this is new to you and new can be scary. When people need help, I never refuse. There's this moment when you're sure you're about to die, and then you're born. I know exactly who I am. I'm the Doctor. Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. Today we're discussing the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos. And joining me today is Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Father Corey will not be joining us today. He has been taken captive by Tim Shaw. No, I'm just kidding.
A virus.
Yes, he came down with a little bit of something and is unable to join us. So get better, Father Corey.
Yeah.
But, of course, we needed to get this episode out and discussed. But before we do, Jimmy, if you could give us a brief word about our giving campaign, which is coming to its climactic point.
Right. So we have just a short time left in the giving campaign. We're going to wrap it up by the end of the year. And so that means that we really need to hear from you. A number of months ago, StarQuest stepped out in faith and began producing a whole bunch of new podcasts. We knew that once people got to hear them, got to know them, they would see the value in them and respond by supporting them. And people have been doing that, but not enough. And so in the new year, we're going to have to be taking a hard look at our finances and saying what can we actually afford to produce. And so we do need to hear from you right now. The way to do that is by going to sqpn.com/give, Give. Once again, it's sqpn.com/give. You can either give a one-time donation, or what we're really hoping is that you'll become one of our regular monthly supporters on Patreon. If you're able to do that, we have some lovely thank you gifts we'd like to send you. And, time is running out. So we're coming up on Christmas, the anniversary of God's greatest gift to mankind, his own son. So please reciprocate in the spirit of giving by helping SQPN keep producing the podcasts that you love, whether it's Secrets of Doctor Who, Secrets of Star Trek, Let's Talk, Jimmy Aiken's Mysterious World, or any of the new podcasts that we're hoping to be rolling out in the new year. We can only do those things. We can only keep making these great podcasts with your support. So please go to sqpn.com/give. And since this is a podcast, you could pause it right now and go there and come back and not miss anything.
Exactly. And you don't want to miss this, because we're going to have a great discussion. So this is the penultimate episode, or the final episode. I can never figure out how exactly they number these seasons of Doctor Who and New Who when we have the Christmas / New Year's now episode.
Sometimes they seem to group the Christmas or New Year's episode with the next season, or in between them, or at the end of this. For practical purposes, the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos is the season finale.
Let's call it that. Okay.
And it ties up an arc that began way back in the very first episode of the season. So this is the natural season finale, and the New Year's episode is going to be a bonus, if you want to think of it that way. Right.
And speaking of the New Year's episode, we do have a title for that episode. They've just announced some of the information about it, which the title is called, appropriately enough, Resolution. Get it? New Year's Resolution. But it's also...
Ooh, I see what they did there.
Yeah. Also hints at maybe resolving something else. We have a trailer that they released. It's got some sense that we're going to see a bad guy that it might be familiar, perhaps. The trailer doesn't show us, but do you have any predictions, Jimmy? Of
it's already been spoiled online exactly who the villain is. Yeah, and you can deduce it from the trailer because the Doctor is saying this is the DNA of the most dangerous creature in the universe. Blah blah blah.
Right.
Well, in the Doctor Who universe, that's pointing very strongly at one particular race, the Daleks.
Yeah.
We also know that the BBC has an agreement with the estate of Terry Nation to use the Daleks in some capacity at least once a year, and this would make sense for them to do that here. And it's also been spoiled. It's the Daleks, and apparently they've had something of another color makeover, so they won't look exactly like the last time we saw them.
Of course, those Daleks are always getting makeovers. Extreme Dalek Makeover would be a great show. Actually, speaking of Daleks, I have to say, there's an old skit from Mr. Bean, that classic Rowan Atkinson TV series, where it's a Christmas theme, where he's in a shop and he sees there's a Christmas display of a nativity scene and various toys, and he kind of acts out with the toys, various things coming to interrupt the Christmas scene, and one of them is a Dalek, which is really funny. It's kind of the Dalek chases the sheep, and is he doesn't. The thing with Mr. Bean is he doesn't talk. He only makes grunting noises, but he makes a noise. Corporal
Marx.
Yeah, right. And he makes a noise like a Dalek exterminate. It's very fun. If you can find it online somewhere, it's cool. Quite humorous.
That's also not the only time Rowan Atkinson has dealt with Doctor Who villains, because he also played the Doctor in one of the specials in between the classic and the new series. It is a comedy special.
Yeah.
So he's doing a comedic version of the Doctor.
Gosh, I remember that. I think I saw that. Was Hugh Grant in that one?
Yes, Hugh Grant is another incarnation of the Doctor in the same serial, but Rowan Atkinson is the main one. It was also written by Stephen Moffat.
That's right. That was hysterical. If you ever find that, I don't know that I could find it now, but
it's on YouTube.
Yeah, Google Rowan Atkinson Doctor Who, you'll find it.
Curse of the Fatal Death.
That's right. So let's talk about Ranskoor of Kolos, which is not a barrel of laughs.
Actually, before then, we have a couple of other bits of news.
That's right. I'm sorry. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, so it's confirmed Chris Chibnall's coming back for the next season. Jodie Whittaker's coming back for the next season. All three of the companions are coming back for the next season. Woo-hoo. Unfortunately, the next season won't air until early 2020.
Right. So just about a year.
Yeah, so the New Year's special is all we're going to get of Doctor Who in 2019.
And
which means on this show, we're going to go back to our standard format between live seasons, live reviewing new seasons. We're going to go back to our standard format of talking about episodes of Doctor Who from both the classic and the new Who era, alternating between them.
That's right. And we got some other fun stuff planned, like an intro to the Big Finish audio plays, which we've talked about. We actually have done an episode on one of those, which I'm looking forward to because I really want to get into it. And it's such a vast catalog. I don't know where to begin. So this is where we're going to help people how to get into the Big Finish audio plays and some other stuff like that. So, make sure you stick around. Because
also, after our review of the New Year's special, we're going to have a season in review because we had an episode of suggestions for Chris Chibnall before the current season started. And so now we're going to kind of do a report card and say, okay, so how do we think he did?
How'd he do? Yes, that should be interesting. So stick around for that. One of the things interesting about this news that we wait till 2020, it feels like this is the new pattern is they give us a season and then they take a whole year off and then another season. If we're lucky, it's only a year. It's kind of and it's not just, Doctor Who. This seems to be a pattern in
a lot of shows,
TV in general, especially streaming TV, but TV in general. Well, how do you feel about that, Jimmy? I mean, just in general.
Well, I don't like it because if I like something, I want to see more of it soon. Right. I don't want to have to wait a whole year. And so these days we have these short seasons, like 10 episodes in the case of Doctor Who, 13 episodes in the case of most series. And then I've got to wait a year or a year and a half before I get more, and I don't like it at all. The thing, though, is the quality of television. I mean, it's not like it was in the old days, back in the 70s or 80s, where you'd have, or even the 60s, where you'd have, 40 episodes, or at a minimum 26 episodes a year. And then you'd have 3 months off before the new season started, and you just watch reruns in those 3 months. The thing is, modern television is so much better than it was then. And so I think that's their defense, is if you really want the good writing and if you really want the good production values, then we need the extra time to do it. And, I don't know that that's all of why it takes so long. I think some of it is actor scheduling issues, but basically I can live with it, but obviously I would prefer having the stuff I like out all at once.
Right. For me, for shows that are more of like an ongoing story from season to season, episode to episode, it makes it difficult for me to just even remember what was happening in the all right, what was going on, and I just forget. And with Doctor Who, it's not as much of a problem. I mean, it's much more episodic than, say, I don't know, Game of Thrones or
The Good Place, Man in the High Castle. Exactly.
Where Man in the High Castle, I had to go back and read the Wikipedia article to remember who everybody was and what was going on. So that's not as bad. But one of the things that the schedule kind of confirms, or hints at confirming, because there's no confirmation, that there was a bit of a dispute between Chibnall and BBC. BBC wanted the fall, and Chris Chibnall said, I don't have time to get it done by the fall. If you force me, I'm going to do a shortened season, and I might quit after that. And that was concerning.
In the case of Doctor Who, I think, I hate to say it this way, but the big hang up is the production values. If there's anything that causes Doctor Who to need extra time, it's not the writing.
Right.
It's the production values, because the writing, especially with these self-contained episodes, I mean, some of it is, I'm not saying the writing is bad. I'm just saying it's not Shakespeare, and you don't need the intense amount of time to craft it on the writing level that you do on the visual level.
Right. And that's with 10 hours, of TV, they're essentially creating, half a dozen, 4 or 5 full-length movies in a sense between now and then.
Yeah.
So and they have those really high production values. So, all right. So that's the news. I think that's all the news. So let's jump into talking about the Ranskoor of Kolos.
Ranskoor of Kolos. Don't let it destroy your soul.
It just trips off the tongue. Basically the Doctor gets just as a recap, the Doctor gets a distress signal from this planet. They go with the companions. They encounter this guy who lost his memory. He's on a mission. They find that it's the Stenza and perhaps their old enemy, Zim Shah, if we want to say it correctly. Yeah. And things proceed from there. So, so it's a pretty straightforward premise. So let's start from the beginning. We have these 2 figures, an older woman, a younger man. They are standing in this
quarry.
Well, yeah, basically it's a quarry.
Such
quarry
nostalgia for Doctor Who rock quarries as alien planets.
Right. Sort of like Southern California deserts for Star Trek. And it's or sound stages anyway. Yeah. So they're there, and they're about to do some sort of task. The younger one, in fact, is about to do it. He has some sort of power that allows him to manipulate rock or something telepathically, we'll say, or sometimes mentally. Yeah.
I don't know that he's reading the rock's minds.
Thank you. I probably meant to say telekinetically, but yes, using non-physical powers, and they're interrupted in this and it's a bit dangerous process, and you get the sense it's a big deal, and they're interrupted by
the woman is also talking to him about, like, the more we know, the more we realize we don't know. And
right.
it's like, ooh, that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's a well-known cognitive bias.
Right.
People who know little assume that they're super competent, and that only wears away as you start to actually become competent.
Yeah, and then you have imposter syndrome. So, right. In fact, you get the idea it's conveyed pretty clearly that they are a religious group or religious people. Yeah, they have a religious role.
Talking about the creator and stuff like that.
Yeah. So what is it? She says, the more we learn, the less we realize we know. This is our faith. This is our existence. The creator would contend the world is not to be understood, only experienced and built. And I thought that was an interesting comment. The creator would contend the world is not to be understood, only experienced and we might say stewarded, or what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's an aspect of truth to it, but I think the world is to be partially understood. It's not that the world is not to be understood at all.
Right. You're not going to plumb the depths of the mystery.
Yeah. God gave us reason to partially understand the mystery of the world that he's given us, but we're not going to be able to fully do it.
And so we're told that this younger figure, his name is Delph, he's trained for 17 years to do something called shape the world, and whatever that means, we'll find out as we go along. And then they're interrupted by the arrival of some figure in this blue light. Yeah.
Teleports in.
Yes, and we don't know who he is. Although I think it's the woman. I didn't remember her name.
Oh, her name is Andinio.
Andinio. Okay, that's why I didn't write down, because I didn't know how to spell it. But Andinio, I think she identifies as the creator. Does she identify him as the creator at this point?
I didn't catch it in that scene, but obviously from later they've inferred that the arriving figure is the creator.
Okay. And then we get like a screen card that says 3,407 years later. And that's where we then come to the TARDIS. And the doctor says we're getting 9 calls for help, all coming from the same place on one planet. Now, were the 9 calls for help coming from the 9 different ships that had crashed?
Yeah.
Okay, they're like automated calls. All right.
Right. And they then teleport in the TARDIS into one of them. They also translate the name Ranskoor av Kolos for us. Apparently the TARDIS didn't translate it for some reason, but she says, roughly speaking, it means disintegrator of the soul, which seems to refer, they don't really follow up on that, but it seems to refer to the fact that the planet itself has a telepathic field that does damage to your mind.
Right.
And so to block that, the doctor has these mood inhibitor devices. She calls them neural stabilizers that she makes everybody wear.
And don't lose it or you'll go insane. Thus, we have Chekhov's neural stabilizer.
Someone's going to take it off at some point. Yeah,
exactly. So they're inside this crashed ship, or this ship. I don't know if it's not crashed, it's landed, but they're inside it. And they encounter a man with a gun who has no memory. And it's an interesting device that they're using, a narrative device they're using here, where they have someone who knows stuff, but will only be able to reveal it over time as you go, as the story progresses.
Right. So they slap a neural stabilizer on him, and the doctor immediately tells him, don't push. It's going to take time for stuff to come back to you. And I thought, aha, writing convenience. They're going to be dripping out information as the episode goes along, as they need to fill in the plot for us.
Exactly.
So it's like, because he knows he should have left for some reason, but he doesn't know why. Well, guess what? We're going to have a dramatic reveal on that later.
Yeah, exactly. Like
this is the temporary guest cast equivalent of the doctor not being quite able to remember something and then coming up with it later.
Well, in fact, she does that, I think, like at least twice in this episode too. So in fact, if he had all of his memory, it would remove a lot of the drama. Most of the drama is created by his, at least through the first 2/3 of the episode, is created by his loss of
inability.
Memory.
Yeah. Personally, I find this to be weak writing. It's such a cliche. It's a crutch in writing to have the characters not be able to remember, and then stuff slowly comes back to them as it's needed. It's the equivalent in Sherlock Holmes stories, and this happens in quite a number of them, where somebody withholds a piece of information at the very beginning that would have otherwise completely collapsed the story if they'd done the obvious thing and say, no, I'm not a vampire. I was trying to suck poison out of our son's neck. What do you think?
Right.
And otherwise, the Sherlock Holmes story doesn't get going. And so you have these bizarre withholdings of information sometimes.
Right. It's almost like maybe like one of the more modern Star Trek writers would do. It's sort of a Star Trek device of the withholding of that information. So it is a bit of a weak writing crutch. So we have the reveal of who this creature was who showed up with the Delph and it's Canandaigua, New York. I don't know whatever her name is.
The other aliens are called the Ux.
Right.
Learn.
Right. I'll just call them the Ux.
Yeah. Also, the guy who gets his memory back slowly is named Paltraki.
Yes. Yes. He gets that pretty quickly. And so we have on screen, we have we get the big baddie, and it's Simsha, the Stenza. They're not quite, they knew it's a Stenza, not quite sure it's Simsha, but eventually we find out that it is. And in fact, he was sent when the doctor in the Woman Who Fell to Earth, the first episode of the season, when she hijacked his teleport and knocked him back to his planet. In fact, she didn't. She knocked him 3,400 years into the past. Or
that's
present?
Not what I got. I got she knocked him sideways in space onto onto Ranskoor of Kolos, but
this is 3,400 years in our future.
That's what I took. I took this as being the year 5425.
Okay.
And so that's a future Earth. But you could be right. You could because to up the drama, and I think this would be another writing flaw because they didn't make it clear one way or the other. Is that present Earth that's about to be shrunk, or is that future Earth that's about to be shrunk? Obviously, present Earth is going to be much more emotive for the audience than something 3,000 years in the future. And
the companions, I mean, especially given because Yaz says it's 7 billion people, which in 3,400 years may or may not be how many
be the
people.
case.
Yeah. So you're right. You're right.
I think they didn't make it clear enough for me to catch it on a first watch, and they didn't give us what they could have done to give us more drama is show people running around screaming with a red force field in the sky.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Right. All we saw was the Earth from space.
Yeah. And
so he has assumed the role or the persona of the Ux's god, the creator.
What a bunch of rubes.
For people who are like almost nearly all powerful, who can shape creation, literally shape creation with their minds, they seem to be very easily. Yeah, they seem very easily duped by guy who teleports in. So
what on earth? And this is another writing flaw. They didn't provide us a rationale for why would they think this guy is the creator. I mean, you just don't assume that most people you meet are the creator. and so if you want someone to think that someone they've met is the creator, you need to give us some kind of reason why.
Right. And we're also told about the Ux is that they live for millennia, the doctor says, when she finally figures out who they are, and that there were only ever two, which to be two there are, a master and apprentice.
I know. They're like the Sith.
Yeah, which raises the questions, which maybe I don't want to answer, is if there's only ever two, where do new Ux come from?
Yep. And, having there be only two of you is a lousy survival strategy, whether you're a Sith or an Ux.
Yes.
You really want a breeding population that's a lot bigger than that, because one of you gets killed, your species ends.
I mean, given that they can shape reality with their minds, maybe they reproduce through parthenogenesis or something. Or they're maybe like they're phoenixes or they regenerate, something like that.
Yeah. Something like that, but still, doesn't make sense biologically.
No. So we find out that Paltraki took something from Simsha, and
we can just say Tim Shaw. They say it in the episode.
Okay, because it's funny you just say Tim Shaw. Although he's credited in this one, he's credited as the character is Simsha, as opposed to the first episode, which it was Tim Shaw, which is it's kind of funny. So he took something, and although Potraki says I recovered it, we're not sure what it is. The doctor figures out it's this crystal-looking thing with a ball inside,
spinning ball in it.
Yeah. Ooh, what is that spinning ball?
And
it's something.
She scans it with the sonic and says it's insanely super dense, but it's even weirder because I can pick it up like it's nothing.
Right. It's a combination of we find out Stenza technology with Ooks's abilities have created this, and we'll find out what it is. And then we come to this scene where once again I think the best part of the episode is Graham, and where we have Graham pulls the doctor aside and says, "Doc, I want to talk to you alone for a second. If when we see Tim Shaw, I'm going to kill him." Like he just,
if I can,
right off the bat, he's just, I want you to know. And the doctor's like, "No, you go back." And he says, "I'm not going back." And then she tries to say, "You're better than this. I'm not going to let you do this." And he kind of just has this quiet resolve, this stern, grim resolve. He's not blustering. He's not. And I thought this was so well done. I liked that about him.
And until they discover the stasis chambers, Graham is 100% right.
Yes.
Because what they did was, as he puts it later, we did not get rid of that thing properly, and now look what's happened. I mean, Tim Shaw has, when they just teleported him away, he's now enslaved incredibly powerful beings to him religiously, and bunches of people have died because they've been sucking. We're going to later find out they've been destroying planets, and all of their populations are dead. And the surviving planets in the Alliance have been sending ships, which he's been murdering people from. And Graham is absolutely right. You have not dealt effectively with this threat. You just pushed it off on other people, and millions or billions of people have died as a result of the doctor's refusal to use lethal force when necessary and warranted. Graham is not simply after revenge. He's after justice and protection of the innocent.
So this would be a moral use of force, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, because the moral principle is, you have to safeguard life, and where the unintentional side effect is that the only way to safeguard life is you have to kill. Right.
You can't call the space cops and bring them in here. The space cops have tried, and he's been killing them. Right. So if you have the ability, if the only other way to deal with it is vigilante justice, it is warranted in this situation, unless you come up with an alternative, which, this being the Doctor Who universe, they do. But until that happens, Graham is 100% right, and the Doctor is simply wrong.
Well, and there's another moment right after that where the Doctor sort of called on her sort of arbitrary superiority, moral superiority, when Ryan calls her on her no weapons. She's like, he called her on her no weapons rule, where she's about to use weapons, and she says inanimate objects are fair game for use of weapons on, and that's
anything that can be replaced,
right? And that's valid. Yeah, rebuilt or replaced. And that's a valid, idea. But he says, well, you stopped me from shooting the sniper bot, which is an inanimate object. And she says, well, you were new. And by the way, don't quote my rules back to me because I change the rules all the time.
Yeah. And that's something that I think is a good thing for them to have done here, not just artistically, but I think Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, and this is continuing a trend from recent Doctors, but I think she's the most pacifist Doctor we've ever had.
Yeah.
Other Doctors had no problem killing people. I mean, they didn't do it with relish. They weren't out. They weren't bloodthirsty, but they had no problem using lethal force. And even recent Doctors, when they've been confronted with an extreme threat like the Daleks, or the Time Lords have been willing to use lethal force.
Right.
And so it'll be interesting for me to see the New Year's special where she confronts the Daleks, and does that shake her pacifism? But thus far, she seems to be the most pacifist of all of the Doctors, which is, I can accept as a on the writing level, is okay. That's who she is as a character. And people change over time, and regeneration shakes up your neural pathways. Your views on things do change. So I can accept her being a pacifist doctor, or almost totally pacifist doctor, but it still doesn't make me agree with pacifism.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure we'll talk about this more in our retrospective of the season, but I feel like this, and I think we've talked about this before. This Doctor, the 13th Doctor, is a reaction to the 12th Doctor's extreme cynicism, and also the willingness of the past few Doctors to use force at times. Now, they weren't exactly freewheeling out there like the third Doctor, perhaps, but they were much more likely to use force when necessary than this Doctor was.
Certainly 9, 10, and 11 were, especially 9 and 10. I can think of examples off the top of my head where they were. The 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi, he was very anti anything military. Right. I kind of view him as a precursor to this Doctor. Right. But he did have the very super cynical, abrasive outlook. He may have been willing to use lethal force in some circumstances, but if so, it's not coming to mind. Okay.
So, moving on in the story, we have the Doctor. We have the companion separation. That's the one of our two major ways to build drama in a Doctor Who episode, and so that we have companion.
Before we get there, they come up on this spaceship that's hovering in the sky.
Right. Well, that's right.
It's like, ooh, we've suddenly stepped into the movie The Arrival.
Exactly. Yeah, and it looks like you sort of along the lines of what Delph was putting together earlier in the beginning of the episode with those rocks. It's sort of got this rockish look to it, hovering in the air. So you think maybe that's somehow connected. And so they have this split up, and Yaz and Peltraki are sent on the original mission objective, this recovery of objects. Graham and Ryan are sent to rescue the remaining hostages. One has been killed by Tim Shaw, but they're unarmed. And that was one of the things. Like, so Peltraki's got a weapon, but Yaz, Graham, and Ryan are unarmed, and they're going into this dangerous place that soldiers have been captured or killed in. And I was thinking to myself, why is it that the Doctor thinks that the companions are capable of carrying out these very difficult missions?
She's given them these devices. I mean, she had a bunch of devices there, and I know she gave like Graham and Ryan these decoder devices, right, to try to crack the locks that are holding the hostages. She also has a bunch of grenades, and she keeps 2 of the grenades, but she hands out some of the others. And so I thought maybe they all got grenades or something. I wasn't clear on that.
I mean, Yaz is, as we've said, is a policewoman. You know, she's a police officer. You know, she obviously must have weapons training although I would assume that even though most British PCs are not armed
as a matter of course, they surely have had weapons training.
Right. I would think so. Maybe someone could enlighten us on that. But Ryan is, essentially what, 20, 21 years old, works in a warehouse. I mean, on what basis? Like he and Graham almost get killed by the sniper bots.
Yeah, and Ryan has a physical disability. On the other hand, a grenade, if you can't aim straight, a grenade is probably the kind of weapon you would want to use.
Yeah, right. Grenades, so you just got to get it near them. Like I said, they do encounter the sniper bots that we saw in Ghost Monument episode earlier, and Tim Shaw has appropriated those for his own uses here, and they escape from them. Sniper bots, for being quote unquote snipers, are pretty bad shots.
They're really bad. I mean, these robots have a terrible friend or foe system because Graham and Ryan are between 2 rows of sniper bots. who are pointing their guns at them, and their solution is to duck so that the sniper bots shoot each other. And it's like, come on, before humans deploy autonomous killing robots in battle, they're going to have better friend or foe systems than that. If you just imagine human beings standing there and you've got two lines of them and people trapped in the middle, and the people duck, you will just aim down.
Exactly. Even stormtroopers wouldn't fall for that one.
Yeah.
So the doctor realizes that the woman and the younger man are ooks, has that explanation about there's only two of them, the millennia that they live, and says
it's super cool. It must be so awesome to be you.
Yeah, although she lives for millennia, but she says they are faith-driven dimensional engineers, and that they're in a living building. I thought that was an interesting idea of their faith-driven dimension. It's their faith that gives them the ability to shape reality around them. And I feel like it's almost like an interesting take on the idea from the book of Genesis about being given stewardship over creation. I mean, they've essentially been given a stewardship over creation that allows them to shape it in ways that we can't shape the creation we've been given stewardship of. I don't know. I thought that was an interesting
I didn't
concept.
Get that it was their faith that made that possible, but it maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, the doctor uses the phrase "faith-driven dimensional engineers," so I thought that was interesting. Maybe faith is their
cultural driving force, but
right.
Maybe it's also what powers their abilities.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. And then we find out that the Congress of the Nine Planets sent Peltraki and his fleet in response to these atrocities. And what we learn is the atrocity is each of the 9 planets is being captured and packaged in these tiny or relatively tiny crystals that are being held inside this building.
And this is not the first time we've seen this on Doctor Who. Way back during Tom Baker's time, there was a season known as The Key to Time. And one of the series within that season, The Pirate Planet, was about a planet that would shrink. It would like appear around other planets and then suck the resources out of them. And one of the planets that it tried to do this to, the planet Calufrax, turned out to be a segment of the Key to Time. But the Pirate Planet had also been shrinking down other planets that it was holding in like gravitational balance with each other. And so we've seen this concept of we've got these multiple planets here shrunk down in a small space, and there are issues with are they balancing each other properly, and what happens if we bring a new one in. Right.
And that's one of the things that Dr. warns is that that having all of these planets in this condition in close proximity is so dangerous that it will destroy all the planets and the one they're standing on, and they'll all die. And Tim Shaw doesn't seem to care at this point. He's probably, it's almost like he's been driven mad by his fate. He was injured somehow in this teleportation that brought him to this place, and is reliant on these life support systems.
Yeah, and he says the Ooks spent so much time keeping him alive, and it's like, why would you worship him then? If you had to, it's like if you have to save somebody's life, it's not really a good argument that he's a god. I mean, I'm not saying gods can't be injured and die, but they would. If it has to sort of be like voluntary, no man takes my life from me, I lay it down of my own accord.
Right.
If he's just dying and can't help himself, how is he a god?
Right. And it's sort of this is the message that's coming across is like, because the Ooks are following him in a sort of blind faith that is destroying not only themselves by through the Delph being a very obvious crucifixion analogy. They're in this device that looks like a crucifix, destroying themselves, destroying others.
And a stained glass window.
Right. It does have that look to it. This idea that, that their blind faith in following this false god it does so much damage, is bad for everyone. It's creating so much evil.
By the way, one thing I wanted to note here, because some people have online, like you watch videos on YouTube, and some people in talking about the gender change on Doctor Who and in other franchises where you have like Star Wars, The Last Jedi, it's been criticized for saying, well, the females are always right and the males are always wrong. You know, you have this anti-male narrative going on. Well, we don't have that in this episode. Because you look at the two Ooks, and Delph, the male, is the one who's saying this is wrong, and it's Andinio, the female, who is the gung-ho, this guy is the creator one. Right. And we got to obey him. It's like, in this case, it's the woman who's wrong. That's
true. That's a good point. Yeah, it's not so clearly one way or the other. And then one thing the Doctor says to her is, in refuting this, is, don't you see, you are the creators? Now, I think some could take this as saying you are the gods, that there is no God, you are God because of your abilities. I don't think she's saying that. I think what she's saying is Tim Shaw is using your natural abilities to make himself into the creator when you are the one doing the work. You're the one who's, without you, he's nothing. And I think that's really what she's saying in that moment.
As always, I don't think the show is really taking a stand on religion. You notice at the end, she tells the Ooks to keep their faith.
Yes.
And we know their faith is based in a creator. In fact, as soon as they realize Tim Shaw is not the creator, Andinio starts talking about the true creator and his will.
Exactly.
So, they're, as usual, they're being religiously neutral on the show.
Well, in fact, at one point, the Doctor kind of calls out to the universe, quote unquote, to help her as she's trying to restore these planets and stop Tim Shaw from stealing Earth. She says, "Come on, universe, help me. Help me help you." She says, "Tim Shaw might have a shrine, but I have a ghost monument." Again, reference back to the second episode. Also, Graham in this moment, while Graham and Ryan and all of this are trying to rescue all of these people who are held prisoner in these stasis chambers using these decoders, as the sniper bots are coming down on them. And there's a moment where he stays behind to kind of blow up the sniper bots. And just as they come in, he yells, "Yippee-ki-yay, robots!" I'm like, "Yeah, Die Hard reference."
Yeah, and stop just short of the part of that line that you couldn't say on children's television.
Exactly. But the rest of us knew exactly what he was saying. There's let's see. Tim Shaw shows up. Ryan stays behind with Graham, and Tim Shaw confronts Graham before he knows that Ryan is there, and Graham has this moment where he has to decide whether he's going to shoot Tim Shaw or not. And he doesn't, and Tim Shaw calls him weak for not shooting.
And then starts to attack him.
Right. At which point...
he shoots him in the foot.
Shoots him in the... And Ryan says, "You shot him." And he says, "Yeah, but just in the foot to shut him up. Don't tell the doc. She'll be livid." which is a great moment. But he realizes that moment he has a solution. I don't have to kill him. We can imprison him in the stasis chamber, which, frankly, I don't know. I mean, is that he can still get out of it?
Well, and that's the thing. So they later tell us, the Ooks do, that no one's going to be able to get into the ship because they sealed it. But come on, this is Doctor Who. Villains come back and kill more people.
Right. I have a feeling that this is not the last we'll see of Tim Shaw. And there is Graham has this last line that he says to Tim Shaw before they seal him in the stasis chamber. He says, "As you're contemplating eternity, keep one name on your mind, Grace," referring to Grace, Graham's wife.
And he and Ryan both say Grace at the same moment, which is cool. Also, it occurred to me that and I don't know that Chris Chibnall intended this, but they're actually showing him grace at that moment because he deserves to die.
Right.
But they're actually showing him grace at that moment by imprisoning him instead.
Yeah, and in fact, there's a sort of, as you know, again, like you say, probably unintentional, but there's a certain Christian truth in that. As you're contemplating eternity, remember grace, because eternity, you know, especially heaven, is a grace for us. And I just thought that was kind of a nice reminder, even as I'm watching Doctor Who, which is why we talk about these things, because sometimes there are deeper layers and hidden meanings that may not be intended by the show creators, but are there nonetheless. And then you know, the Ooks, you know, they say praise a true creator's will, and we see they haven't lost their faith, and that's a nice reminders that, you know, that it sometimes in shows like this where the people of faith who are taken advantage of, their faith is taken advantage of, they become cynical, and their eyes are opened, and they're no longer, you know, blind followers of a god. They haven't lost their faith despite what has happened, and I like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of wrap things up from there. I mean, there's a, you know, we're the Ooks, like you said, seal the building. The Paltraki and his people go their own way, and the Doctor and the companions, the family, she calls them, that's what they call themselves now, is fam. They go back to the TARDIS, and there's another nice moment between Graham and Ryan, where Ryan calls Graham granddad again, and then even admits he loves him, which is a nice moment.
Yeah. So I had several smaller things to mention, if that's okay.
Sure.
So one of the things that occurred to me, some larger issues first, even though I've criticized at a number of points the writing in this episode, I wanted to say that in terms of feel, despite writing problems on individual levels, it really succeeds in establishing a dark mood and a looming ominous atmosphere. And you just feel that all the way through. The pacing is such that I happened to look down at the halfway mark in the episode and thought, we're already halfway through with this. Yeah, it didn't feel like it was that long. So I thought that it had some really good aspects to the writing too. The pace was good, the mood was good, it was very effective. I thought it looked good. I also really like that we have an earned ending at the end.
Yes,
the solution is not deal with the critical failure point, kill the queen vampire, and all of the other vampires die. Instead, they have to earn the ending piece by piece by putting together all of these different elements in their different teams. And even though this is, you know, fantasy and they're, you know, a lot of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in real world terms, the fact that we have to cobble together an ending at a plot solution out of a bunch of different pieces rather than having one magical fix everything thing you've got to do is something that I really liked. That's good writing. I also liked individual points of dialogue I thought were really good. I liked how there was some scenes with Ryan and Graham where Graham was talking about Grace, and he said she liked being alive and she was really good at it.
That's good.
I thought that was nice. I liked in another one of those scenes where Ryan is trying to convince Graham not to kill Tim Shaw, and he expresses familial affection for him. And Graham, rather than just instantly melting, says, I've been waiting for that for too long. Right. And Ryan bounces it back with maybe, but you've got it now and I love you. And then Graham is understandably what? And Ryan says a believable thing given what they've established. His character is being like, he says, I'm not saying it twice. Don't pretend you didn't hear me the first time. and that was good. The Doctor had a nice line when she first meets Tim Shaw, and he explains he's been here for 3,407 years, and she says, "Ooh, I bet the last 7 really drag."
Yes. The Doctor can often have, especially in New Who, a sharp, barbed tongue. Sometimes with the zingers on people. That's a good one.
I thought that the writing was weaker when as part of the solution, they're saying the Doctor and Yaz are going, we can't disconnect the Ooks from this machinery because we don't know what would happen, and it might cause things to go really bad. And then they both simultaneously get the idea, wait, let's slap neural balancers on them to cut off their telepathic contact with the machinery. And I'm going, number one, are the neural balancers designed for your brains going to be strong enough to block all of the telepathic power these beings are putting out? And number two, isn't that just another way of saying let's disconnect them, which was the very thing you said was too dangerous?
Right.
But I could accept that.
Well, then there's the related problem, which is, we have to use the neural balances that we're using, so we're now going to be susceptible to the planet's influence, which doesn't really go anywhere. That doesn't nothing really
get headaches.
Yeah.
They don't start hallucinating or anything.
And then the Doctor calls the TARDIS, which presumably she could get a couple more neural balancers out of it if she needed them, which she didn't. And so that was, like you said, that was a bit of a loose end or a bit of weak writing.
Yeah. Another kind of plot hole there is Ryan has been sent down to the surface of the planet with Paltraki to help evacuate people, and then once he sees they're kind of safe, he comes back for Graham. But how does he get back up on the ship? He doesn't have a sonic screwdriver to knock on the door with.
Right.
But they just gloss over that. I liked that the Doctor uses the clapper on the TARDIS when she comes in to turn on the lights.
Notice that, yeah.
I liked that Ryan finally gave Graham a fist bump, which Graham had sought from Ryan a couple of times this season and not received. And I also liked Andinio when she's defending, before she realizes Tim Shaw is a false god, she's defending him and says, he is my truth. He is our truth. When the Doctor has just been explaining that he's a false god. And it's like, there's that subjective truth language. And it's like, yes, I love seeing this my truth, your truth language exposed for what it is. I don't care what you think the truth is. Truth is objective and real, and we need to conform our views to what's objective and real if you want to grapple with the world realistically. There's this, my truth is somehow subjective and it's okay for me to believe whatever I want, regardless of what the facts indicate, is pernicious relativism. Right.
Yes, that was excellent. So if there's I got a couple other bits of just little Easter eggs. The Doctor mentions the TARDIS regressing a Slovene back to an egg. Yep. We saw that in Boomtown with the 10th Doctor. Is it the 10th Doctor or the 9th Doctor?
It was the 9th Doctor, actually.
Okay, all right. So and then she mentions towing the Earth halfway across the universe.
One of the stupidest moments in all of Doctor Who. That's from the End of Time story. Okay, this
it's
one of the it's towards the end of David Tennant's run. It's
Journey's End.
Journey's End. The Daleks kidnap Earth and a bunch of other planets, and the Doctor uses the TARDIS to tow the Earth back.
Right.
It's the Donna Noble exit story.
Yeah, when Rose came back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was that one, and then just the idea of the Doctor summoning the TARDIS with the sonic screwdriver. I thought that was an interesting little bit there. So. All right, so I think that sort of wraps up what we have to say about Ranskoor of Kolos. But I do want to discuss some feedback we got. We got quite a bit of feedback this week.
Awesome.
So on It Takes You Away, Danny Butler says the case file video. Now, to explain, the BBC has on their website, they have a Doctor Who section, and every week they have a video related to the current episode with some, behind the scenes sort of stuff.
And if I remember correctly, the case file episodes are in-universe explainers.
Right.
So you'll have Yaz, for example, talking about, we met this Patang and here's what happened.
Yes. And so in this one, the case file video for It Takes You Away suggests that there are more creatures like Ribbons and the Flesh Moth living in the Anti-Zone.
Okay.
And like if I didn't mention, this was Danny Butler writing this on Facebook. He says, I think the writers don't explore too much in-universe beings and places because they want to focus on the small stories, which I get. But
yeah,
there's a balance. If you're going to introduce something, you gotta use it. Says it feels like the whole Series 11 has a strong focus and emphasis on characters, which must have been decided in the writers' room during the pre-production stage. What do you think? I think actually that's been said. I think Chris Chibnall has come right out and said that they're much more interested in talking about characters than they are on mythology and the other stuff like that.
Yeah, and to the extent we'd have a season arc, it would be principally about the characters and their development, which even applies in a way to Tim Shaw.
Right. Yes. Yes, we're working on his character. Let's see. And then Rick Angelini, also on Facebook, says the end of the story really sort of fell apart. The talking frog didn't make any sense at all.
The talking frog was a hurdle to overcome. I could accept the concept, but it looked like a practical prop. And its mouth just didn't work with the dialogue coming out of it. Yes.
Jeff Miller says, this might be my favorite episode of the season, as I like the horror movie vibe along with some of the dialogue. The sonic screwdriver as a weapon bluff seemed a bit odd. It immediately seemed out of place to me, especially considering the direction of some of the previous episodes, the Doctor's attitude about weapons. Regarding the balance between the Anti-Zone and Solitrack segments, while I liked the Anti-Zone part, the Solitrack had a lot of exposition as an info dump and some new Whoverse info. So I think what he's saying there is that I guess that the Solitrack didn't have a whole lot of action.
Yeah, he might be meaning, though, because I think one of the criticisms that I think you may have made, Dom, was that you thought the Solitrack thing kind of got more attention and had an interest in seeing a more substantial Solitrack sequence. And I think he may be saying that actually we did get quite a bit of substance in the Solitrack thing. But it's, your opinion that it still would have been nice to have even more would still be a valid view.
Yeah, I guess I think, my point, I guess the Anti-Zone stuff was more action and the Solitrack stuff was more exposition from looking back at it. And that might have been why they did it the way they did. Whereas if you didn't have the Anti-Zone stuff, it would be a whole lot of just exposition and people talking about stuff. So I guess I could see that trying to balance it. He says the frog acid trip scene was just odd. It would seem the Solitrack would want to be more presentable to the Doctor. I could see shifting away from Eric's wife, and maybe the frog is an allusion to Grace's frog necklace that Graham wears. Yeah, I think that was clearly an allusion to Grace's necklace. But you're right. Why would the frog be appealing to the Doctor? It's just odd. Good character development, and I like the understated way they have the relationship develop between Graham and Ryan. Graham's portrayal really adds weight as a companion. Very well done. And I'm on record as agreeing with that. John Scrivo says, great podcast as always. One thing that the Solitrack universe reminded me of was the Nexus in Star Trek Generations. Interesting idea. Where that was like a zone where Captain Kirk sort of created a reality, his ideal reality from his presence there. I also thought the Anti-Zone felt underdeveloped. Ribbon seemed like a savvy survivor and then appeared to make a foolish mistake of lunging for the Sonic. Also, why didn't he bring more rat snacks for the moths? Well, I have to agree. When you don't leave home without enough rat snacks, in general. Last thought, why didn't Eric just bring Hannah with him into the Solitrack universe instead of abandoning her? Maybe deep down he realized, too, that his wife in this alternate universe was a fraud.
Yeah, I think they don't really explain why Eric didn't bring his daughter with him, because that would be a logical thing to do.
Right, instead of abandoning her by scaring her. Yeah.
Well, only temporarily. I mean, he was coming back. He was just delaying.
Right. And then there was another bit of feedback that just came in either this morning or last night, and I'm going to have to find it quick. But it was from a listener, Alfredo Barunda, who on the Witchfinders episode, he mentioned, we talked about the... what's written on King James's garter. Yes, and it's from the Order of the Garter, which is knighthood, Order of Knighthood.
And there's a Wikipedia page if you want to read about the Order of the Garter. He included that very helpfully.
Yeah, you find that on our Facebook page. So that's...
By the way, I saw one other piece of feedback that comes to mind where someone commenting on It Takes You Away, where we have the frog at the end, and someone commented that it reminded them of the doorman in the current season of The Good Place, because the doorman also is a fan of frog symbols, and frogs play an interesting role in the plot as a result. And yes, I thought of exactly the same thing when I saw it too. I thought of the doorman in The Good Place.
That is, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is excellent. So, just trying to see. I think that's it for feedback. Oh, there is one other little bit of news that we put on our webpage, just realized on our Facebook page, that there's another new animation of a missing Doctor Who serial.
Oh, yeah.
Coming next year in early 2019.
The Macra Terror.
The Macra Terror, which is a second Doctor, Patrick Troughton serial. So
giant space crabs.
So, maybe if we could get access to that for ourselves, we might do an episode where we discuss that. So that'd be good.
We should totally do that.
Yeah. All right. So remember, folks, to like Secrets of Doctor Who on Facebook, retweet it on Twitter, leave us comments, subscribe. If you have not yet subscribed in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where if you do subscribe, hit the bell in order to get notifications when we post a new episode, and share the podcast with your friends to help us grow this community and reach more listeners. I mean, we have a wonderful growing community of Doctor Who fans and listeners who provide this excellent feedback, and we'd love to get more and more of you to join us. So that's it from us. What did you think of the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos? Let us know by going to sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, finding the link to this episode and leaving us some feedback, or send us an email to drwho@sqpn.com. You can find links to all of our personal social media and our websites on our show notes on sqpn.com. Remember, if you can, please go to sqpn.com/give to help support this show and all of our shows on the SQPN network so that we can continue to do this podcast and all of those podcasts. We really do appreciate that, but time is running out, so don't delay.
And now that the podcast is over, you can go there and not miss anything.
Exactly. So we'll wrap it up so that you can do that I'll say, next time we'll be back. We'll discuss the 10th Doctor episode, The Shakespeare Code, and all three of us will be back for that. Until then, Jimmy Aiken, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Dom.
Once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, none of us knows what's out there. Keep your faith. Travel hopefully.
Right. This is going to be fun.
This is Dom Bettinelli again. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and that you'll help us keep producing the podcast you love. Thank you for your generosity. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give.